Hello everybody, I'm here this evening with Sven. Hello Sven.
Good evening. How are you doing, Karen?
Yeah, you've been doing quite a lot lately, haven't you? You've been out with Trinity 4.
Yeah, it was good actually. It was a very fortunate coming together because there's no such thing as coincidence. Yeah, he was in my area, the South Coast, Bournemouth region, and yeah, we promptly got together because I Trinity 4 from the Global Eye tour in the Euro tour, basically, or the UK conference actually, which was back in 2019. And yeah, and you kind of sort of stay sporadically in touch, but then when you know that someone's in the neighbourhood, you kind of make an effort to get together. And of course, the last couple of years it wasn't really possible anyway. It was very tricky. Was possible, but it was just tricky.
I'd like to meet Trinity 4.
Yeah, I'm sure the opportunity will arise at some stage because there'll be initiatives coming up in the future. Well, one in a very near future in July. So there's always something on the horizon, as it were.
Also, just as we're on this bit here, because we're going to put a video on and then we're going to talk over the top, but I've mirrored some of your videos, the towers and the snooker hall and other things as well. Oh, yeah, your NASA one as well, I think. I did that one as well.
Well, they are always worth having a look at, not necessarily from me, but in general, those topics, because they're the things we should be questioning constantly, and we should be getting on their nerves, the powers that shouldn't be, with those questions, So it's important that we keep highlighting them. We don't have the luxury of owning the BBC. We have to do it differently.
I don't like them to go off the cliff, but yes, at the top of everything, those people are. You did Fort Pickens. You know that
yes,
did that one, and we had a hangout, and he was talking about Fort Pickens. I think it was that one.
Right, in Pensacola.
Yeah, not just that. The legs on it don't all go the same way, do they? They're all the legs are going different ways.
I don't know about that. I didn't know about that. Is that right? Yeah.
I'm not sure now whether, because some of them are very symmetrical. But I thought it was the same fort. Maybe it wasn't, but
It might be the same fort because what we were doing was the chap who shared his footage with us because he was over there. Well, he lives there, not in the fort, obviously, but he lives nearby, and he was mainly filming it from inside and studying all the brickwork and that sort of thing, and that fell right in line to what we were doing with what we were doing here. Simultaneously, again, no coincidence, and that's why that came together where he said, I'd love to share it with you guys, and so we did it on the I think it was the Where It's At channel. We had a podcast with a chap called Eric Dulion, and an American fella, and he shared his footage with us and we talked through it and stuff, and it was very fascinating because that fort is made up of 21.5 million bricks.
Wow.
Go figure. Yeah, how would you do that? Well, you certainly didn't have any brick factories because they weren't invented until 1885. That's a fact. That's in the British history book, so it must be true, right? So they can't have their cake and eat it. Either the history books are accurate, in which case we can nail them on it, or they're not accurate, which we also know, so we can nail them on that as well. But yeah, so that was a happy coming together because just that fact alone, 21.5 million bricks. I mean, just figure that out in tons. How much does a brick weigh? Times that by how many, and it's just amazing.
I haven't noticed any real difference actually. Only that now the star forts were sort of panning out, so there's quite a lot of it, and they were just getting bigger and bigger. There's small ones, and then there's much bigger ones. They're all symmetrical, and then suddenly we started coming across where the legs are facing different ways, even though it's symmetrical. The leg bit, like the claw bit, is facing another way.
Yeah.
And we just had this hangout with our Augmented Reality, and then we were finding them here.
Yeah, and what was the conclusion that you drew from that, if I may ask?
Well,
was there any sort of conclusion that was drawn from it?
We found that great big complex by Dover.
Right. Yes, and that's the place I'd like to go as well. I've been through Dover loads of times because we used to go on the...
I bet you those millions of people don't realise just over the top of the hill. They might know it's a fort or something, but I bet you most of them have got no idea what's just over the hill for them.
Absolutely agree with you totally. That's the thing, it's in plain sight, isn't it? I think 99% of the population are totally unaware. I mean, we actually, Trinity 4 and I, when we did a couple of those live streams, but one of them that's not on camera, he started talking to a lady who was working. She was obviously on a cigarette break or something, and I talked to her about old buildings and the mud-esque thing to look out for. She didn't have a clue. She was like, oh, that's interesting, and she was well up for listening to more. So most people, I would say, they see prism lighting in the ground and think that's normal. It's normal to build basements and want light in your basement room. I mean, you know, no one gives it a second thought.
Me and Amy, we were just looking up things, and Amy read out that Azar is a shortened word for Caesar, and you're like, oh my... It's just, everything has another meaning, and then you find it. Anyway, 1 second, Sven, 1 second, 1 second. We're back on now, and what it was is that I said I'd stop if I saw anything interesting, and the moment I open up the first video, I've stopped it. And where are we?
We're at Bournemouth Town Hall.
Right. One thing, though, we have realised, me and Mickey, that although that looks like big stone bricks, those are probably facades. They're like little tiles.
Uh-huh. And that is exactly, excuse me, there.
London. You notice that in London, they're using little tiles, which, if you didn't put your thinking head on, you'd think that they were big stone bricks, but they're not. They're facades.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, you get glimpses of that if you look at building sites that are still active or being, if there's new houses being built, you can get a nice little insight as to what they actually do nowadays. And they do a lot of facading work, and we figured that out. And on closer look at the town hall, not only was there lots of facading, so they were clearly hiding something, but also it went very, very deep down.
Hiding red brick.
Indeed, indeed, hiding red brick. Because that's the funny thing, isn't it? You always find that at the lowest level, it's the red brick. So you have to ask yourself, A, who made the bricks? How did it get there? And, you know, and what was here beforehand? What were they concealing? So, yeah.
We were just talking
and
about
the town hall is an amazing building.
The pick fort, like, it is millions of bricks. I did a video and a donkey could carry about 25 bricks and a horse could carry 40 bricks. If you put them together, they can pull a lot more, but you'd still need millions or hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds of them just to take this. It's just impossible if you've got to go 9 miles up a hill.
Well, exactly. I was going to say, first of all, you never had any transportation system. Now, people try to shoot me down over it and say, well, the train was invented by then. And I said, yeah, that doesn't mean to say they had a train track running to everybody's back garden. That's not what happened. You know, these things take time to roll out because you can't surprise the public so that they figure out that actually you've had this equipment lined up the whole time, which is that's my personal opinion. I think a lot of this has just simply been rolled out. It wasn't invented. And it had to be done bit by bit, so as to give it the illusion that aren't we a clever nation? The Industrial Revolution has kicked in, and now suddenly the human race worldwide has thought of building trains, and yet for tens of thousands of years we sat around goofing off. Well, that doesn't make sense either, does it?
Cameras and cars back to the 1700s, so that would feel right if... What I feel is, it's a bit like, there is no such time as the League of Gentlemen, but if you imagine those kind of people, they were rich, affluent, everybody got on, everything was going tiddly-boo, and everything was being invented, and it was all great and electric, and then something happened, I feel, in the early 1800s, maybe even in the late 1800s, but then everything changed after that, and kind of got less quality, less everything, and then came the poor Victorians. That's what I see.
Yes. Well, I agree with you on that, and I had loads of...
It's just, you can see the photographs, and then there's these rich ones, and the photographs look older, and they've muddled them all together and made them one people, but they're not, they're different eras.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange things going on, but I agree with you with the timeline. Late 1700, early 1800, because that falls right in line with the Industrial Revolution, you see.
Sorry, me and Mickey did the Blackpool Tower the other day. Okay, that's like a Tesla tower, but they've got this most beautiful ballroom that looks like it's been there for hundreds of years. I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah, a lot of bands and comedians and stuff perform there to this very day in the Blackpool Tower room, in the ballroom,
the ceiling, though, do they?
No, they won't. There was a tower in New Brighton, just a few miles south of there, near Liverpool, that was dismantled. Very similar tower,
really?
New Brighton Tower.
Somebody also mentioned it in the comments. It's probably been flooded there. And he said it took a few years to reclaim that building, which I don't know. I can't substantiate it. But that's what someone put in the comments. But there is a bit of land which looks like it's just gone. It's like it looked like it had a whatever on it, and then only half of it's there. So maybe that's true.
Yeah, it could well be true, or it could be entries into history books to sidetrackers.
And also, they built up the front of that. They put that cross thing on the ground, and it's all got comedians in it. But they put that whole thing out the front, in front of that building, which wasn't there. It was just the sea.
Yeah, yeah. And again, what an unusual place to build something like that, right? Right on the sea. Why would you do that? It's like down here when you go to places like Weymouth and stuff. You know, when you go to the coastal towns like Weymouth, the front, you know, the first houses you see on the seafront, they have stairways going down below sea level. And you think to yourself, well, that does not mean you just wouldn't build houses like that. Not right on the seafront, you wouldn't. Yes, up a hill maybe, perhaps, but not. You wouldn't risk it. Yeah, and you know, it's lots of things like that. And of course, there are no photographs or anything of the construction of these buildings. That's another thing that stands out.
Like Buckingham Palace is another one. Like the balcony that's behind the one we see, which is the original palace, is beautiful. And then for Queen Victoria, they built on nearly half a palace in the 1830s, whenever it was. And it's not quite half a palace, but it's not nearly as nice as the one behind, and that's all Roman. Like.
Yeah. Well, I think Queen Victoria, you just mentioned there, is key in the whole thing. For me personally, there's no coincidence that our first biggest monarch, or any large reigning monarch, let's say, has the name Victoria. And if you look up the meaning of it and what it means in different languages, like it means Nike, I think, in Greek, which means the victorious one, which kind of leads you to suggest that is the opening. The opening salvo for a new era, let's say, right? A reset, as it were. Because if you look around London and all that, it's all memorials about Victoria, isn't it?
She was the 1830s.
Sorry?
She was the 1830s, wasn't she? Up to the 1900s.
All the way to 1901.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that, and how plumb and nice is that date? You know what I mean? It goes it covers the rest of the 1800s, and then straight away, beginning of the century. And we were all mechanized. We had our trains, we had our hydraulic cranes, all that sort of stuff. And that was it. Everyone was up and running. And then within 40, 50 years, we have jet planes.
Sometimes,
so,
we're making these things, I can't remember what me and Mickey were looking up now, but power stations. They could have made them they lasted 20 years and then they demolished them. Why would you do that?
Yeah, you wouldn't, would you? They'd still be standing.
You're
just
not
like
demolish things, are you? You know, like in the Second World War, we were like many years behind other people. We've kind of caught up, and we're kind of American-like now, but not in the Second World War. There was still a lot of horses and carts and things. You know,
yeah, I mean, I'm half German, right? So I have well, there we go. And as you know then, right, if you have both sides of that life, if you know what I mean, like nationality-wise, then you kind of see the difference in quality of life and all that sort of stuff. And Germany
I'm not
always...
on my passport, but my dad's parents...
No, I'm not on my passport either, but my mother's German.
My dad's parents, it must have been their parents, so we're talking of... Well, so what would that be? That would be it's my great-grandparents. It's obviously them. So, yeah, no passport thing there, but... German, French and Jewish they were.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm part French. My surname's French.
Monique, who lives up she lives up in Yorkshire. She's half German, and Amy, she's more English than me, but she's German as well. It's really uncanny, isn't it? So much German.
Yeah, well, our whole family's German.
Are we following them?
Who knows? But, you know, I was gonna say you can tell a distinct difference between the quality of life. Like my German grandparents, for example, their pensions were much higher than the average pensions here in the UK, and all that sort of stuff. They look after their people better. Yes, they're all subject to the same powers that shouldn't be, like we are, but they sort it out on ground level amongst the people much better than we do here.
Over there. Denmark's like that. As long as they can keep it going, they get pensions, and we don't get them.
They do it the correct way. Anybody who knows a little bit about economics will know the more money people have in their pockets, the more they're likely to spend. And it keeps a society affluent, and it keeps society progressing. And it keeps them happy, and it keeps them satisfied and fulfilled. We don't do that over here. We screw it out of people that haven't got it, and we let those who have got it just get away scot-free. And that's the problem over here. You know, there's an imbalance, and there has been for generations. I've only just recently come back from Germany. I lived there for like 20 odd years. recently, a few years ago I came
Is
back,
that why
and
you're
nothing's
called
changed since I left
Sven?
college.
Is that why you're called Sven?
Sorry?
That's why you're called Sven.
No, Sven is actually a Swedish name,
Oh.
but it's nothing to do with that. Yeah, Sven means boy in Swedish. I never knew that. Someone told me that a few years ago. But yeah, people do presume that's a German name because it's actually popular over there. It doesn't. You don't hear it much here, but you hear it a lot in Germany.
Me and Sven have talked just a little bit to arrange this hangout, but we haven't really talked at all, have we? We don't really know each other. But I've been nicking your videos.
Which is fine by me, because I think it's great that you're doing that, and I did write that, I think, in one of the comments to you. I hope you read it to thank you, because it was like, it's good that people do that,
We're a community as well, like, obviously I've used some of your videos, and now you've come on the channel, but we're a community as well, so that's why, as long as nobody strikes me, I don't mind using other people's videos, because we're trying to show everybody the community.
Absolutely. And share, and let people know that there are quite a few people going out and about doing stuff, because there are, and they should be made mention of, no doubt about it, absolutely. And hopefully we're trying to encourage more people to get involved with these things, because things like hidden history, like as in buildings and such like, well, they're there, the evidence is right there. You don't even have to travel abroad for that. You don't have to do anything.
So much, when they say like a building is built down the side of a canal, they're lying. That they say the canal was built and then the building came. They're lying. The building was built, then the canal came. They're liars. On all the buildings you see, the buildings were always first and the canal's been built round them. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're led to believe, Karen, that water bends round big balls, doesn't.
Well, we do have tides and things like that, but it doesn't.
Yes, but that's only that tides. Yeah. Tides only affect salt water. Seawater, they don't affect fresh water, and not all oceans affected by tides either. You can go to the Bahamas and they're not affected by tides, for example. So there are areas where not all salt water, and that's, you can look that up. That's definitely the case.
All the sea tides are electric. They're just, we can get in that
most
electric.
Probably.
We can get in
I
that
don't
electric.
know. It's the honest. I mean, what I don't know is the answer for me, but I do know, or I can surmise with accuracy. It's not the moon,
We can't get in a hurricane, that's the wrong electric, but we can get in the sea for some reason, and I think that all the waves, just electricity, just a different form of it.
It makes sense, doesn't it, that we're in that sort of, that kind of setup with the sun and the moon, and all that sort of stuff. It kind of makes sense.
Electromagnetics and everything.
Yeah, it makes sense. I can't say I know too much about it. I don't really. I can only go by my observations, and I literally just sort of surmise from that. And half the battle really is unlearning all the crap you've learned. Right?
Yeah.
So,
I've done quite a lot of sun searching here. My window that I'm in now looks east, and lots of nights, as you well know, Sven, you're up making video. Oh, it's 3 o'clock. Oh, the sun's coming, or the light's coming. So I get to see a fairly good view of what's going on out there. And at the moment, these last few years, I've hardly seen the moon outside this window, but for a few good years, it was always outside my window. But I want it to stay where it is at the moment, because the sun's really high and we're having some great weather. So stay there, mate.
Oh, we are. I got sunburn actually, working with a friend the last couple of days, because we were out in his garden working on stuff.
It's sort of 25 degrees. It is hot, but it's not like, if we say that to America in Fahrenheit, they'll just go, oh, that's only that temperature,
Oh, yeah, I was talking to someone from America a couple of days.
It feels quite nice.
Yeah. I was talking to someone from America a couple of days ago, and they were saying to me that they just connected up their, they just switched on their what do you call them, the air cons. And I was like, we don't have air cons here in private households. And they were like, we have to have them here. They were saying it was 107 degrees a couple of days ago.
We didn't really
Fahrenheit, which is whatever that is.
It was not cold.
No, we don't get a proper anything in this country, Karen. We don't get a proper anything.
If we didn't have the clouds, we'd have, like this last few days, there has been no clouds. If we didn't have these clouds, this is the kind of weather we'd have.
This is the kind of weather we'd have. And actually, it was quite funny you're saying that with the clouds, because this morning, me and my mate, when we got up to get the work done, first thing we noticed in the sky was some chemtrail action. And then lo and behold, a few hours later, we had cloud cover for the first time in 3 days. And we just both looked at each other. We didn't say anything. We both knew.
I wonder how it doesn't burn it all off. But, you know, there is a layer. Me and Mickey were trying to show it in a video. There's a layer above the normal clouds, and that's got all that in it, and it's quite nasty.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, this technology in terms of weather control and that sort of stuff, or weather manipulation, has been going. I mean, there's footage of it dating back to pre-World War II.
But you know what?
Right,
the clouds aren't very high up. You can go and find them. The Twin Towers had clouds round them. The Eiffel Tower has clouds round them. People have got no idea that they're only so many feet up.
Yeah. You can have different layers of clouds. You'll know, anybody who's flown, you sometimes when you descend, you go through lots of layers of cloud, especially if there's lots of cloud cover. You know, and sometimes you're pretty low to the ground before you clear the clouds.
It's really weird. You know, I remember flying to Holland, and I was a bit lower anyway. It was still a jet engine, but it was a propeller one. And I remember thinking, God, don't the clouds look low? I'd never noticed it before. And they were.
Yeah, they can be very low.
It was an hour and 10 minutes, the journey, and we managed to do it in half an hour. It was supposed to be 300 and something miles, and she says on the antenna, I've got it on the video, it's on one of the channels, it's quite a long time ago, but she says, we've made up half an hour of the journey, and in fact, I think it turned to nearly 40 minutes. How could we do that in such...
Well, that just shows you, doesn't it? Because the propeller machine certainly hasn't got the capability of just notching it up a few gears, has it? So, yeah, clearly the currents or something going on there.
Like, oh, I'm going to take half an hour of footage from this little aeroplane and not worry when I look through my viewfinder and the propeller wings, you know, they're all going weird through the camera. And then they suddenly say, fasten your seatbelts up, we're landing. And I thought, I'm not ready. Like, we've just taken off.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Do we really know what's below us? You know, we can be shown things on a screen in an aeroplane.
It's above us.
Yeah, I know, but also below us in terms of the land. Well, you know, I'm pretty sure there's stuff there that we don't know about.
Did you see
know what I mean?
video that we did? Mickey again. It was on these islands in Ireland, and it's like the edge of the world. You can see all these layers on this land, and it's like the edge.
Right. Yeah, there's some fascinating places. That most definitely. Some fascinating places. I think the most fascinating we got to see the back end of the Northern Lights a few years ago when we were in Norway, and that's something that's always made me think, you know, what is going on there? I know there's lots of speculation and theories, but you know, what is actually going on? I'd love to just go there. You can't get there, but I'd love to go there and just have a look. You know,
so
why is that part of the world?
What made you get into all this then? What was it that you started saying, I want my own channel and I want to say things?
Okay, well, really that came from the Global Eye Tour, because in 2019 I went to a UK Flat Earth convention, a Global Eye convention really, because it wasn't just about the shape of the Earth, there were other people there as well. Martin Liedke, for example, was there, and Mark Devlin was there, so they were there for other things, not Flat Earth. But it's all connected, as we know, because it's about the lie itself, isn't it? And then after that, I eventually got invited onto the tour. I took part in the tour, and then I started doing daily vlogs for myself, just to sort of have a little bit of a mess around to see if it was something for me or not. And then after that, I then started getting a bit more involved. And I started working together with somebody in America and doing some podcasts for a little while. And then, you know, as things are in life, things, you know, move on and change or whatever, things get in the way. And the last couple of years particularly. And then, and then I started just getting involved with a lot of work down here in terms of, let's just say, encouraging people to take a closer look at the narrative, let's say it like that. And that involved me, of course, doing a lot of filming on marches and things like that, and I started just getting into it more and more. But I haven't really got the equipment yet that I need to set up properly so I can actually do a decent podcast and play some good videos in the background and music and things. That's where I want to get to. So I'm not there yet, but yeah, and I feel like there's so much to talk about.
Did you used to go?
Sorry?
Did you used to go to Hyde Park Corner?
No, I never used to go to Hyde Park Corner. No.
Oh, one more thing.
No, but a lot of the others did.
You've got, I don't know if it's you or Trinity 4, you're pointing this stick at the building. I just wanted to ask you, when you look at it, when you look at some of these buildings, do you see one building and then another building is built on level 2 or level 3 or something? It's like these buildings.
I see a lot of add-ons. And I think...
I'm so glad I saw that in London. You just think, look, that used to be another building. Yeah. That was it. It was 2 floors of that, and then now it's got this other thing on top.
Well, there are a lot of benefits to telling Londoners that your city's being bombed 40 days or however much it was in a row, because that way you can keep everyone locked up at home. You can destroy a lot of buildings and revamp them, can't you? And that's exactly what happened in a lot of our cities.
Nikki found another one showing a map of where they said all the bombs were. When you look at it, when they did it for like how many weeks they did it, but it was only this period of time.
I saw that. I watched that one. I saw that. Yeah.
London utterly destroyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, allegedly, and here's the interesting one, Karen. Did you know that there was a movement back then of people just like a bit like people at the moment complaining about certain things, like myself, and they were walking around with banners and stuff, getting people to try and wake up to the fact that they weren't getting bombed by the Germans, and they were complaining about blackouts at night. And questioning the government because they were saying why the blackouts were not getting blitzed. There is no bombing from the Germans. In other words, well, what is it that's breaking those buildings, ruining those buildings then? If it's not the Germans flying over bombing, who is it?
The other thing is
what's going on there?
Because there's so many things marked on a map, it must have been strategic things that they were ruining. But, you know, for goodness sake.
Well, allegedly, according to our history books, we never had the technology. We didn't have laser-guided missile systems or anything like that, so you couldn't have been that strategic. You'd be carpet-bombing places.
You should watch the video I've just put out about Hitler that he's walking to a curtain. It wasn't real.
Yeah, I shall. I'm fascinated by that topic because, you know, it's not all that glitters is gold, is it? There's a lot more going on.
That's what I get watching it. But now I know something else. It's like, you know, he was a Roman emperor as well. He's in the Olympics. I've shown it many times. I've made videos about it. He's flying double eagles. I tried to explain it on another hangout. You know, if I come from another country, another world, say, and I have a flag like that, I'm not going to be flying the double eagles, am I? These people, there's many of them. The Tsar of Russia was flying double eagles. Hitler was
absolutely.
How did Hitler become a Roman emperor and then be the baddie?
Because he's all part of the game, and that's the thing. Just like Putin is, just like
kill him off, and then he's the baddie.
They probably don't even kill him off, Karen. They probably fly him out there and create a narrative of him being killed in a bunker.
It's all cartoons. Yeah. It's all made for us.
Because we don't have any evidence of his death. And that in itself is telling, because normally he'd be a prize trophy. But of course the narrative is that they doused his body in petrol.
And they did that with Bin Laden.
They would do that with anybody. They did it with Gaddafi. They would do that with anybody who's a prize asset.
Dusted. We've sorted that out. Okay, on to the next.
But yes, it's shrouded with lies and deceit, our history. Absolutely, no doubt about it. And having gone through the last 2 years, it's woken me up to that in a big way.
They were still gaining empire upon empire, whatever it was, country. They were still gaining them up until the Second World War.
For us on ground level, it appeared like that, but at higher levels above Hitler's head and above Churchill, the people that handled those.
To it, and then it turned into the Queen's Commonwealth.
Well, yeah, and then you've got suddenly the United Nations being
she runs that
invented,
one as
and
well.
NATO, and then you've got NATO that gets introduced, and this, that, and the other. It's all, it's all games. It's all different control mechanisms.
She runs that one as well, so she's head of that one.
Yeah, well, they all have their little roles to play.
On her tube, her platinum thing, she had a suit on with a laurel wreath which went up the front and around her neck. She's the top one.
Well, did you see a lot of the imagery that they shot on the front of Buckingham Palace that they used as a silver screen? They used it like a cinema screen, didn't they? And they beamed all these images on. And one particular image stood out for me. There was a young performer, I don't know who it was, a young lady who was performing, a singer, dancing around singing or whatever, as singers do. And in the background, they were suddenly beaming up, I think it was 11 obelisks I counted. And at the top of these obelisks that were beamed on the front of Buckingham Palace, there was a little love heart in the top third of each one. And I was just thinking to myself, my God, that gives me, I obviously, I have a different view on it now, because obelisks are a very significant bit of symbology. You have one on the, on the embankment in London. You have one at Place de Concorde in Paris. You have them everywhere.
Yeah, they even put them on war memorials as well.
Oh yeah, well, the Abbey Road album cover of the Beatles where they're walking across the zebra crossing? Well, behind that camera, if you're looking through the lens of that camera, you see the four of them walking across. Well, right behind the person taking that camera is an obelisk. So if you look at that street from a different angle, from the other way, there's a big obelisk there. And that is shrouded with symbology, the album cover, for example. But yeah, they're everywhere. We've got one here.
Right, you know how they made the monkeys? Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. And you know that they've been made for the television.
Manufactured, absolutely,
That's the answer to it all. Every single thing you fall in love with, each band, the whole thing, they're made for the television.
Yeah, it's all show. It's called show business for a reason. You know, it's called show business for a reason, and we forget that very, very easily. And they're so convincing because they're paid. They're paid to do a good job, and they do a good job. Like politicians are paid handsomely to lie to us and be ambiguous and all that sort of stuff, and act like clowns. They get paid handsomely for it. I mean, they get threatened as well, but they get paid handsomely.
So looking at this building that you're, the town hall, it looks like lots of buildings put together, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the town hall. I mean, the bits where Dave was pointing out where you have they're almost like cast marble pillars outside, and they're new. They're definitely part of the add-ons, and the facading, you can see the rock looks newer, and when he's rubbing against it with his thumb, it's crumbling away. So that clearly wasn't the original. And I spoke to somebody who worked in the town hall. He worked for the county for a while, and he said it goes deep down in the ground. They've got layers of basements underneath, which doesn't surprise me, because a lot of the other buildings later in the video you'll see, I mean, there's layers and layers that go down, 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 and it's like, well, this is crazy. We're right on the coastline.
Do you know what I've just realised? I've realised this video is playing, I'm saying there's something wrong. It's playing at quarter speed, so I'm just going to speed it to normal now. Right, now we're at normal. But anyway, there's a long way down.
There's a long way down. So even when you're peering over and looking down a shaft, even the bottom of that shaft is concrete closed, so it goes further down than that, right? Because you'll notice that the windows are very low to the shaft itself, the bottom of the shaft. So obviously that's wrong, because they wouldn't have built windows at ground level anyway. So that goes even deeper down. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and there's so many of these buildings around there, like the church. There's a church just up the road from it, and all that, and you're just like, how on earth would you build this?
Palace.
Yeah, it does. It's very majestic, and considering that the times these places were built, Bournemouth was only small. You're talking maybe a few thousand people tops.
Oh right, whereas we're at the marble ones now, the pillars. So you're saying they're add-ons? Yeah,
they're add-ons. They're cast. They're marble cast or whatever they're called. There's a phrase.
That doesn't mean it's new, does it, or not?
Well, it's not. Well, yeah, but if you see where he's pointing with the stick, if you look at the bottom of those marble casts, those bits there that look like fresh new concrete.
Right.
Right. So that is all. When you go against it with your thumb, it was crumbling away. So you can see that's been put there as a decorative add-on, not to. It wasn't built to last as the main bulk of the building, because behind that window is where the building really starts. That is all facading.
Right.
And that's the phenomenal thing about it. So they've done a lot of work just facading these places. And of course you can do that in peace and quiet if you have people locked down.
Isn't it? You've got things being built down, and then churchyards built up, and this one's built down.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are built up. I find that all a bit crazy. So the road is lower than the churchyard. Oh, I just find, what is all this?
Yeah, it is, and that town hall is at the top of a hill, right?
Is it
and you got to park
down the hill slowly?
Yeah, it's very strange. It's very, very strange. And yeah, Bournemouth has a lot of these places, like a lot of the old hotels. They're all old work.
It's quite cliffy there, isn't it? Oh yeah, it's got quite a lot of hills.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
When I look at that building, I think the 1700s.
Yeah.
Oh, do you think it's a star fort?
I don't know. I've looked at pictures of Bournemouth from above. Not many, by the way, and I can't detect any. But however, you can if you go further down the coast. So if you go to places like, let's say, Portsmouth, for example. Yeah. Portsmouth, I believe, is a star fort. There are remnants of it if you look at the old town plans. Bournemouth isn't, but I think Weymouth might be, or there's bits of it that might be. Not too sure. Plymouth might be as well, but
Yeah, because
yeah,
it kind of
Bournemouth
stretched
isn't.
really, and then you get these other, you get the one, oh, I can't remember what they're called now. They go under the ground ones, and there's only a few of
Right.
those from say Eastbourne to Dover, and you think I can't really be protecting that much because there'd be more of them along here. Readout.
Well, yeah, and and who you
Readout
protecting
points.
it? Yeah, who are you protecting it from? A few people coming over in wooden boats. I mean, what's going
I don't
to
think
happen?
these things were for protection. There were obviously some system going.
No, they weren't for protection. I mean, and not just that. People also have to understand that not just the building of them is difficult, but also you need the manpower and the money and the resources to do that. You have to feed your workforce, all that sort of stuff. Britain was always constantly fighting wars at the time when we were building all these magnificent buildings.
But if we were fighting, how could we afford all this?
You couldn't. You wouldn't be able to. You'd stop. You'd have to stop. It just wouldn't be possible.
Well,
I mean, allegedly.
It's so complex. It's so grand.
It's too much. It's almost overkill, isn't it?
Looks like a palace.
It's almost. And you have these retaining walls all the time that you see in front of the building, right?
Yeah.
So there's that gap between the outer wall of the building, the facading, and the main concrete wall there that's put in. And that will take a lot of work to pull that back from the building.
But that's what London's like. I mean, with London, I said to Mickey, are you sure once they did all that bombing, what they did was they made everything so uneven. They just came in and made these roads, and then it's put some of London underground and some of it not.
That could be, but then Bournemouth was hardly touched. So how do we explain? Right, and that's the thing. So, yeah, because we have the same phenomenon in Bournemouth, but
when we're looking at that, that's part of the Star Fort.
Maybe, yeah.
But then again, say 200 years ago they had to do all this. They still had to have the money to do it. These things weren't cheap. And they didn't just slap these things up. They were properly... They're still here after hundreds of years.
Yeah, and you'd need, like I said, the logistics to cope with it. That wouldn't have been in place. Right? I mean, just to get to a neighbouring village 200 years ago, if you didn't have a horse, you were screwed. And it was fields and woodlands and shrubbery.
But we've got horses, we've got cars and cameras back to the 1700s, and they probably go back further. And when we see those films, and those films look really old, it is because they are that old.
Yeah. So
We're
again,
looking at them maybe saying
history books have been
1800s. They could be the 1600s.
But this is what I'm saying about rolling out the technology under the guise of an industrial revolution and a couple of world wars. That's how you can speed up, or that's how you can justify sudden new technology being there, can't you? With these big events happening. Oh yeah, our scientists had to work particularly quick to invent this, to invent that. That's the explanation we always hear. Penicillin, photography, radar, all these key things that today are very normal.
Nothing's really changed, has it? I know we've got better mobiles and stuff like that, and maybe the phone communications is better, but I mean, in reality, they're still looking for cures for everything. Nothing's really changing.
Well, the cures we're looking for are the cures for things that we've produced ourselves, self-inflicted.
Yeah, and you know what? We were healing ourselves. There were so many salt seas, salt things. We were healing ourselves, and then the farmer took over.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you start monopolising things like that, and oil, and education, the key things, the key pillar stones of our societies, look, I mean, this is another thing we talked about. When did kids, or people in general, start reading and writing? I would say end of the 1800s, maybe kids started going to school, beginning of the 1900s,
early 1900s,
found out.
Children at school.
Right.
And
Before
in this
then,
video, they've been given clog shoes. I mean, that's not our national shoe, but the children have been given clog shoes. That in this video, Lancashire, it said.
Yeah, I saw that video. It's quite interesting. And the thing is, right, so it would make sense to prepare the narrative to such a time that everybody's ready to be able to read and write. Because beforehand, what's the point? History books are useless to you. Right, so you've got all that time to backwrite history and slowly introduce it to people through world's fairs, through exhibitions, all that sort of thing.
Something happened, and then all the children are orphans or supposedly going up chimneys, which I just don't know any more about that. But that's the story, and then we get to children going to school.
Yeah, and then also you have all these asylum buildings dotted around.
Yes, you know what they are, don't you? It's almost as if there was this land here, and then they are like centres for when people come in So all immigrants, where have they come from? Probably not from here, maybe. And they've been brought to these detention centres. And I mean, they can say anything. Your parents have died, and then that child gets fostered on and is an orphan child on one of those trains. I mean, how the hell do you can't? Well, anyway, you know what I mean. It's just going to be different to what.
I know what you mean. And that's why I mentioned asylums, because they're also / orphanages, weren't they? Right?
And they
that's
looked quite nice as well. They were great big buildings like this.
Massive. They were huge complexes at times. Some of them were huge. They were like small towns.
There gardens in them and everything.
Yeah.
They were called hospitals and.
Yeah. And they knew exactly what the word hospital meant. I mean, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of. I think a lot of stuff went on underground. And that's what we're slowly sort of coming across. You know, every time we get fobbed off with that silly excuse, oh, it's smugglers' caves. Smugglers don't have time to spend weeks digging a small tunnel to get their stash from a rowing boat into or whatever. You know, they don't have time for that. So obviously these deep below ground tunnel systems, they were there. They've been there for ages. You see it in Liverpool, for example. They're everywhere. Deep down. Look at London, for example. You know, look at the sewage system that allegedly the Victorians built. It's all made of bricks, hundreds of miles long. You know, our underground network in London is supposed to be based on that sewage system. That's what they used as the original kind of template, allegedly.
Omitted, really. They used them for mail trains for a long time, and one of them's in a museum in London I want to go to. Me and Mickey want to go to that. But they had pneumatic trains first before you called them the tubes, and they were smaller.
Yeah, but they were based on the sewage system.
And that
they used the sewage system as their plan.
Palace and all that, which they destroyed, and
yeah, and it's like, okay, so if you're building tunnel system, that's one thing. But please explain to me how you do that made of bricks.
Well, there's other
Where'd you get the bricks from?
Supposedly to Europe, isn't there? How could they do it all?
Well, who knows? Maybe, you know, I mean, the lay of the land may have been different. We don't know. I mean, because it doesn't say in the history books. I mean, like I said, the evidence of what we call mud flood doesn't necessarily mean a flood of mud. But, you know, the fact that the ground level has come up, and you can see that on a lot of these buildings, even the ones with facading on it, well, there's no mention of that event taking place, that cataclysmic event.
The land is so flat round them.
Well,
that's
don't know,
the only thing I have, like, you know, if this mud happened and this whole thing happened, and I find it really crazy that windows end up being underground and don't rot away, and they've been down there for maybe 60, 80 years or something, or even longer, but all the land around is usually quite flat around it.
Yeah, maybe. I've seen some buildings where the ground has been relatively uneven, for example, where you see half a cellar window popping up, and then a quarter, and then a third, or whatever.
The buildings were slowly sinking because they didn't have foundations like we have today?
No, because then how do we explain the tunnel systems below those buildings?
How does that
Because they would all have to.
You've got all those. I mean, Mickey said that he worked and he went down some of these tunnels years ago, and he said that it was like the bottom of the buildings were in the tunnels. And he said
So hence
their houses, the bottom of their house, they could come out in the tube tunnel if they wanted.
Yeah. Well, my landlady
How do you build all that on top of tunnels?
Well, my landlady who owns that.
When you've just got horses and carts.
Yeah, my landlady who owns the house that I live in, she said to me that when she was a little girl, we're going back to the 1940s, she said she still, with her friends, could access the tunnel systems that came off the basements under this house. There are tunnel systems that come away from the basements, but they bricked them up now. The police bricked them up in the 60s. But she said back in the 40s and 50s, we used to play there as kids and almost get lost, she said. There's loads of tunnel systems here. So... yeah.
So this is why we keep getting sinkholes, but they're not going to tell the truth, are they?
Yeah, they're not going to tell the truth. Yeah, it's remarkable.
You had this whole pneumatic train system going, and then they made more tunnels and stuck tubes in them. They're bigger. But it's just like, how can they have all these like London must just be a warren den.
Must be. Well, the same goes for Paris. They say there's cities under Paris, isn't there? As it were, there's a city under a city. I mean, there's proper riverways. We have rivers underground in London that we know of. Never mind the ones we don't know of. You know?
Do you know, it's really strange when you're looking. I think you've moved away from the town hall. You're looking at something else, but the bit of building on top looks older than the facade underneath.
Yeah. It's hard to say.
Maybe there was a few crumbling bricks and they've put this facade on it.
I'd like to know whether the town hall, I didn't look it up properly, but I'd like to know whether the town hall allegedly got hit or not in the war. That would interest me, actually, or what did get hit, because I know that a couple of bombs were dropped on Bournemouth, but allegedly the story goes the Germans released them so that they could get back, because they would have had too much weight on board otherwise. So they decided to drop them on Bournemouth. I'm thinking, really? Is that what you do? Okay. So, yeah, but that's how the story goes. So
yeah, that's the story they told everybody while they were doing it to ourselves.
That's right. That's what I'm more and more believing now.
Horrible thing to sort of like, if I turn around and I go to my parents now and I tell them all this, they'll go, "You have lost it. You're insane." When actually, it's what happened, Mum and Dad.
Well, you know, it's a bit like talking to somebody who works, I don't know, and builds satellites, let's say.
Yeah, works for NASA.
Right. Now, a lot of those people have no idea what happens with their equipment. They just go there and build their equipment, and that's their job. That's it. They're compartmentalised. They don't know more than that. And this is the thing. So just because people work for an organisation or anything else like that doesn't mean to say they know the bigger picture of what's going on.
Oh, can I just ask you something, Sven? It's not built on a pyramid, is it, that thing?
No, it's not.
It's just like a hill.
It's just like a hill, yeah, and it keeps going up as well. Behind it, it goes up, and there's like a bridge and stuff, yeah. Okay. I did do a video in Christchurch where there's two ruins built on two mounds. No, there's a ruin built on mounds, and I personally believe that the ruins on the mounds are just stage sets, because in the background is an old Saxon priory that's supposed to be hundreds of years old. It's almost the size of a cathedral. Because I think the mounds are what they're concealing, because the mounds are pyramid shaped, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But they're like grassy mounds, you know, because they're grassy, nobody really pays attention to them.
Castles have them. We've got one in Marlborough College. Now, they know that one is a pyramid. It's a step pyramid. So it's amazing that in Marlborough College they can call that one a step pyramid, but don't all the rest. And then we've got Silbury Hill. That's one.
Well, and round Salisbury Plain near Stonehenge, where they have all these so-called burial sites, burial mounds, right? Ones. Well, exactly. Look at the shape of them. And of course, they prevent people from going there excavating, don't they?
There's some on the way to Silbury Hill as well.
And the thing is, people aren't going to go there and excavate because they're kind of told that they're sacred places, so people respectfully don't go there. It's a good way of keeping people away, isn't it?
Well, I didn't go on Silbury Hill, the actual mound, but between the pyramid, it's almost as if someone's got a wire and they've plugged it into the ground, and these two arms come out of the pyramid and go into the bank. Well, me and Mickey were trying to go around the base of it, then we hit that and we have to go over that, and for a bit I'm kind of looking down the face of the pyramid. It's amazing. So we aren't on it, but we're on it, really. We're on the edge of it, but people don't include this thing. It's like a plug system, one in, one out or something. I don't know, it's most bizarre.
It's very strange. You have it everywhere. You've got it in Old Sarum outside Salisbury that's supposed to be an old fortification. It's actually a green mound, quite a big one. You've got the hill that the Tor in Glastonbury is put on. You've got Corfe Castle that's put on a mound. All these things where you're thinking, what's underneath these stage sets? Right? Because as we know, the proper old buildings, they stand the test of time. They don't crumble and only half a wall is left. Why do all these ruins look the same? There's always half a wall missing, and they all seem to have the same shape, and all this, that, and the other. They're all very similar, these ruins. Well, that's because they're not real ruins. And if you take a closer look, you'll find concrete bases to them and all sorts, like modern-day concrete, and things like that. You know, if you start scrummaging around them and rummaging around them, you'll find all that evidence, really. It's nonsense. You know?
Yeah, smoke and mirrors again. When your eyes been opened a bit and you're looking at stuff, you think, this is great, I'm learning more, but you never get to the end. There's never an ending. You get a bit of information and then it stops, but it's enlightening and then it's annoying because you can never move it on and say, look, we found out the truth. This is when it was built. You've just got ideas about things, you know, how old bricks are. And now when you go and look it up, they've been made for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So, whoa.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. So I've gained a bit of an...
They're all red brick. So they had to add something to the cement, surely.
Well, you would have to. You don't just quarry clay and make them into a brick. It doesn't work like that. You don't just get mud from the bottom of a stream and then make them into bricks and then put them in an oven. That's not how it works.
And our melted reality says that clay is masses of melted brick.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so
that's...
At the end of it, I kind of thought, whatever we see now, and don't forget they've destroyed so much in the last couple of 100 years, or definitely the last 100 years, but if you imagine how much there must have been of it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just think, right, I remember putting a video out a few months ago on the Where It's At channel. It was about the brick making process, and there's a guy who makes a load of bricks, and he shows you exactly how tedious it is, because when you look at a lot of the old structure and then you look up the backstory, the official story, they always tell you that the bricks were made on site and that brick masons made them on site. Well, that is an impossibility when you look at these brick buildings, because the space you would need just to dry the clay, never mind form them, knead them, put them in kilns, take them back out, then put them back in kilns again and all that sort of stuff, transport them, house them, keep them dry under cover, etc., etc. Impossible to be making them on site with a handful of brick masons. Wouldn't work. Wouldn't happen.
Can I ask you
just
something
would
else?
not happen.
In our hangout with our melted reality, what he's kind of saying is it all starts off as red brick, and then when some enormous event has happened, these things then can turn different colours, go yellow, and eventually, or the bigger hit it's had, they turn to stone. And so when you're looking at things, it was all brick, and he says basically you could have a really old building and a modern building, and then the event happens and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference of age, because they'll go through this process of being burnt. The stone will change colour, and if it gets that hot, it turns to stone, and you're like, wow. So that's sometimes why you see stone and brick together in walls. It's because some of it did turn to stone.
That's an interesting theory. It'd be nice to be worth checking out if there's any way that could be tested. What does happen to bricks?
You know,
if you excessively heat them?
Loads of graveyards, and basically, when you see the bigger structures in there, he said these were all buildings before they were gravestones.
Interesting.
But the thing with these things is, no matter how much they want to put in it, I mean, there was one that was made into like Metropolis, and then what they know is that about 60 years later, everybody now who's buried in the cemetery, the people now have died that went to visit them, and then supposedly this cemetery went into disrepair. And then basically Detroit went all the way round it, and then what it was is they just said, well, the university said, well, we would like to buy it. We'd like to put a pitch and a car park on it. And then they started saying, oh, well, yeah, it's not very good for this cemetery to be here, is it? It's just not very good, you know, because the place was full of industry and everything. It was ruining all the gravestones. And you think, well, if they're worried about gravestones, what about the people? And then they wanted to build this bridge, and they knew that they could use what they dug up from the cemetery as refuge along the river. And so basically the cemetery didn't have a hope in hell. So basically what they did was they disinterred all these people. If the pictures are true, the coffins were enormous, like vampire coffins. So there was like 28,000 people buried there. And they wrote to 7 and 3,000 got back, and those ones got reburied properly, and the rest, don't ask me what happened to their coffins, they got a little plaque in a field about half a mile away. And then the tombstones were all dumped along the river.
It's funny you mentioned cemeteries, because as I got my lift back home earlier...
How could they do that? They disinterred these people, and basically it was like, the answer was, well, it's not a pauper's grave, but the name they gave it covered all those things. And the thing is, these people were obviously properly buried, and they weren't paupers or all that. And it's just like, wow, how could they get away with this?
Well, if you think about it in a business sense, right, graveyards do not make sense. So I'm looking at it from a very practical point of view. Not that it's my opinion, by the way. It's not. I don't subscribe to this, but I'm just saying, looking at it from devil's advocate point of view, right? If you're willing to kill people off, as the powers that shouldn't be are more than willing to do, right, with various different events going down and everything else, and an agenda that's been running for 2 years now at least. Yeah. So when you have people at the top end making those decisions, well, I don't think they're going to lose sleep over graveyards, are they? So, and also, just imagine how much land that would be throughout the country, and how much that's worth.
And I bet you the
Real
people
estate.
didn't really know anything about it. It's all done behind closed doors and all that crap.
Absolutely. So, it's like golf courses. Same thing. Golf courses are not very economical. If you think about the size of a golf course, well, you could build houses on there and you'd think, and earn much more money for that real estate than have a golf course on there. But they don't. There's plenty of space for golf courses. Funny that, isn't it? And it's all these places where you think, that doesn't make any economic sense if you're looking at it from a psychopathic point of view, which is how they see things, right? That doesn't fit in because they're not compassionate. So none of their decision making is based on compassion. That's the point I'm making, really.
So just one of the comments that's in your chat room, it's Mighty Atom. They said, I love your points about trauma. Been living it for years. Getting up for work daily is the biggest traumatic experience.
Yeah, Mighty Atom is a good guy. We met again. He's a guy who came to meet us when the tour came to an end at Leicester Square back in 2019, and he was one of the people who came down and met us. I think he works in electric and something to do with BT and things like that. So he had some quite good information when he's talking about power outages and stuff like that. He knew a little bit about what he was talking about there. It was quite a nice angle to get his sort of view on it. Yeah.
And you and Dave, in the video, you're walking along a wall.
Yes, we're just walking alongside what we call Bournemouth Gardens. So they've got the gardens to your left.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the town looks very old. This is the thing. I mean, any buildings that were built, like, say, 50s or whatever, they stand out. They look really new, So if they look new by comparison, then you can imagine the other buildings, how old they really are. Because don't forget, Bournemouth's not an industrial town either. It's not like there's heavy industry there.
I love these old towns now, the ones that have not been modernised. I love them. Yeah.
Bournemouth still has a lot of relics of old. Yeah, we have some newer buildings as well that are pretty horrible, but you've got a lot of the older buildings.
I mean, you've only got to look at Torquay. They don't have any money anymore. That place is just getting more and more run down, that one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to Torquay.
In the 80s, it was a lot more brighter and prettier than it is right now. It looks quite ropey now. I mean,
yeah, that's what happens, isn't it?
Painting them and stuff. It's quite an old town.
Yeah, looking a bit dishevelled.
Yeah, it's probably the same sort of age as Bournemouth, but it's not. Bournemouth's probably kept nicer.
Yeah, probably, although we probably don't have as nice a weather as down in Torquay as regularly. But yeah, Bournemouth's probably kept nicer. I mean, we have an older population in Bournemouth. A lot of people come down here and live here when they go into retirement. We have a big student population as well, foreign students a lot.
Yeah, it's a little bit more relaxed, isn't it?
It is a bit more relaxed, yeah. So, yeah, it's not industrial. It's not industrial.
You live here, do you?
I live just outside Bournemouth. It's in Bournemouth. It's a borough of Bournemouth where I live. Yeah, about 20 minutes walk from where you're looking now.
Right. And what made you look at the towers? Was it all to do with the bricks again?
Look at the what? Sorry.
The towers. You know, I
the water towers.
Yeah, I mirrored some of your towers. Is that because of the bricks?
The water towers was literally because I just thought that nobody. I don't ever remember seeing videos of people looking at brick water towers, and I just thought to myself, well, I've seen a lot on star forts, I've seen a lot on castles, this, that, and the other. But what about water towers? Because a lot of places have water towers, and it just occurred to me that it does not make sense to have a container made of bricks to contain water. So you'd have to have a container in that brick container.
Do you think
well, the problem with that.
The bell tower?
Well, the problem with having a container, just to finish that point off, the problem with having a container within the brick container is that how'd you get it in? Because they only had a small doorway at the bottom. So you would never have got a huge metal container inside there to contain the water. It could have been an old bell tower. It could have been the top part of an underground system that goes further deep down. Again, there'll be something.
You're just seeing the steeple of it, you mean, sort of thing.
I think it's something I think it's something that serves something that was below it. Because there's nothing around the water tower that suggests that it's kind of, unless they've ripped them down, but then why leave the water tower standing?
It's the opposite. It's under the ground.
Well, I think that there's other stuff going on under the ground. Because when I spoke to one of the people who was just going, I walked past there, and he obviously lived there, and I asked him. I said, "Do you live here?" He went, "Yeah." And I said, because they're apartments now, that water tower, right? And I said to him, "Well, do you have basements going down?" He said, "No, we don't have basements." I thought, that's odd, because if you've got a building of that size, you'd need a deep foundation for that to carry its weight, right? So clearly it does go in the ground. They don't just build it on the top and that's it. It's not how buildings work. So he didn't know, and he lives there. Again, there's an example of living in a building and not knowing anything about it. A good example right there. But it just occurred to me, I think every town has these bricked water towers somewhere. At least one.
Well, you know, you said that Blackpool Tower's not what they say. It looks like a Tesla tower.
Yeah, for example. The New Brighton Tower, they said they demolished it or took it down, dismantled it because they were running low on iron or metal in the war. What nonsense. Oh, we better melt that tower, otherwise we can't bomb the Germans. What are you on about? What a load of nonsense.
Yeah, in your video right now, you're going past this really long building. Like it's quite modern looking, but it's really long.
Is it like a shopping precinct?
Is that what it is? You're at the back of the shopping precinct, right?
I think so, yeah. If we're sort of, is Dave still pointing with his stick? If that's where I'm at anyway.
We're walking along a river, but on the other side is this great big long building. We've gone past it now. We're back to the greenery.
Yeah,
it's a bit weird, because like my kids, they think I'm crazy. My mum and dad think I'm crazy. Most of my friends think I'm crazy. But once you wake up and you see it for what it is, you can't then pretend that it's what it was, because it isn't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to be honest with you, I said this to my friend yesterday after work when we were sat having dinner, and I said the reason why I like to hang out with people who are kind of like-minded is because when you do meet family or whatever, you can't really talk about these topics with them. You just can't. They kind of, it's almost like they tolerate you, and I don't like that. I don't like being patronised like that. I expect people to sort of respect me enough to be able to go, you know what, I'm going to take a look at that. I mean, you're obviously not a stupid person, so if you're thinking that, then there must be something to it. That is the response you'd think would come, but it doesn't.
I think the difference is that at the end of
ridicule.
When I'd been looking, I'd done 9/11, and then it came up hoax, flat earth, and I thought, oh no, not something else. And then within weeks, about 6 weeks later, this friend wanted to debunk Nibiru, and I said I'd go and do flat earth, and then it was quite quick for me. But it wasn't going to be. I just thought, I'm not getting into all that. But I did. But you don't. Millions of people go and then come back and say, well, actually, I wasn't going to, but I did. And you don't. They obviously didn't.
It has to be in you to want to take a closer look. It has to be in you to be open-minded like that and do it. I wasn't always like that. It's only happened to me in the last 5 or 6 years that I've really started delving into stuff and looking at it from a totally different perspective. I didn't wake up to 9/11 until 2007. So it took me a good 6 years before I clicked onto that.
About 2011.
So it didn't happen straight away,
When it's owned by Google now. We know what Google is, Globe. So before that, it could all be conspiracy, and then they would promote it. But obviously, when YouTube took over, they just crushed everything. Sorry, Google,
to be honest with you, again, it doesn't matter what they're called. These companies, it's just they move. They're always steps ahead of us, right?
Facebook's the same. They're just monitoring us.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like what you said earlier about we haven't really progressed at all. It's just the technology we use. Well, yeah, our telecommunications technology, like you said, that's it. That's all it is. And what are they? Well, they're monitoring devices, really. You know, it's perfect surveillance. Everybody's walking around with a phone in their pocket.
And when we don't like it, we'll delete it.
Everybody's got a phone in their pocket. Everyone's traceable. Everybody. It's that simple. You know, but no. If you say that to people, it's like, oh,
James reckoned today. I had a hangout with James earlier on, and it's a bit like if you know the film Adjustment Bureau. That's what's going on. We're living in something just like that.
Could be, yeah. Could be. I don't think there's anything off the table. To be honest with you, I think it's all possible.
It is
because one thing's for sure,
like,
you know.
Say 10 years ago, we didn't really talk about star faults or anything, and then one pops up, then another, and suddenly oil, and now there's so many. I can't cope. You go to the computer, and there's millions of them.
And when I first saw star faults, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh, a very well built structure. Until you realise they're everywhere. Then you start thinking, then you start thinking, well, okay, well, if they're everywhere, how do they communicate that building technology to each other across thousands of miles? Because they're all pretty much the same, and from above they're perfectly symmetrical, apart from a few, I know, but mainly they are, right? Now, you'd have to have the technology in place to be able to assess your work that well.
And,
right.
And they're linked a lot to canals.
Of course they are. There's always waterways nearby. And you'll find a lot of them are drained now, which is why they have like flat grass areas in amongst the walls and stuff, like Pensacola, for example.
Amsterdam is one.
Yeah, they look like it's looked like a drained canal. That's what it looks like. You know, so clearly there was water there. And I'm just looking at the screen now, and we've got a building on the bottom of a hill in Bournemouth Square, and you can see quite clearly there. You know, that the bottom right of the building is.
We are. Let's have a look. We are 33 minutes in.
Right, I'm 40 minutes in. There you go. Because you had yours a bit slower, that was why. So I'm 40 minutes and 20 seconds.
I'll just move it along a little bit. Let's move it along.
Okay. So if you go to 40 minutes 20, roughly, then you'll see where I'm at.
Oh, right, that might be it just about there. We're coming into
there's the NatWest.
We're just going past Vodafone. Oh, here we go. Still a bit blurry at the moment.
NatWest Bank, and in front of it there's a green bin.
No, we're looking, is it Bobby's or something? Oh,
right, no, I'm further down than that.
Yeah, I might be a minute behind, but we're looking at that one, and then...
Okay.
We're obviously going to move on.
As you go past Bobby's that used to be Debenhams, as you swing around there, you'll see a building in a minute, a grey one, and it's the NatWest Bank. Well, look at the angle of it. They've even adjusted the windows to account for the steepness of the ground. Right? So, and the buildings go deep in the ground, and then it gets really interesting in a minute. Then you'll see suddenly, some just interesting bits all over the place.
Hang on, we're still looking at the first bit. We haven't turned back round now. You're looking the other way at the moment. You're obviously talking about something. Yeah, I also think, you know, when the buildings are flat on the top, I think those ones are the older ones when they're flat on top.
That could very well be. It seems to be the roofs that always get eroded or burn or whatever first, don't they? Have you noticed that?
Add extra floors at another time.
It's like a lot of churches. You'll find that, for me, it looks like steeples are missing. It's like they've taken steeples off. So you have that Italian look to the main tower of the church, right? Because you have steeples at the back of the church, and yet the main steeple they seem to have taken off. And you've got an example of that in Bournemouth as well. I can't remember what the church is called, but yeah, might be St Clement's Church, something like that. I can't remember now. No, it isn't. It's a different church, but St Peter's, something like that. But
right, you're walking
it's like
to a wall, and there's a couple of telephone boxes, and you're pointing down. Is that the bit where you got to then?
The telephone boxes.
I'm at 38:55.
Right, yeah, I'm on 30. It's 40 seconds roughly.
Yeah, it's not very good quality. Let's have a look. Sometimes, oh, it's at 720.
Right.
Sometimes
I've
they
got the
mess
phone
around.
box.
Yeah, you change it over and then you go to another video and it puts it back. But it says it's because
Yeah.
you're walking.
So we just walked past the guy in the yellow high vis.
Yeah,
Got a bus driving past.
Well, there's a sort of route. There's a building in the middle.
And then we're about to, I think, cross the road here. Then we go into
all
Bournemouth
those
Square.
buildings look quite old, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They do. And like I said, the new ones, you can tell they stand out. Even the ones that are 50 odd years old, they just stand out. You know, it's just like, well, no, you know. But that building there that you now see coming into sight on the right, that will be right in front of you in a minute,
Yeah.
that is the NatWest Bank. And you can look at that hill that goes up there to your left.
Right.
That is, I think it's called Richmond Hill. And you see in the building that they've even built the windows in such a way that you can't notice the change in level so much. So they built the left window a little bit shorter than the right window next to it, and then the ones on the right. Yeah. But you can just look at that and you can see parts of that building are on the ground. You can just see. And it's like, okay, well. And the further you go up that hill, the more you'll see. The incline gets, you know, it gets steeper. And, well, yeah, we actually go up the hill. You'll see it in a minute. And we walk up to that church, which is around the corner at the top. And it's just, you just think to yourself, all right, well.
So how big was that building then?
I don't know.
But then
you've
got other buildings next to it. So how big were they then?
Well, yeah.
I love buildings like that where they build them like round corners. So the building is like a triangle. I love them.
Yeah, they're interesting, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then we find this thing on the back of it. It's like an archway. It looks like there's something was attached to that building, but yet there's windows right there. You're thinking, well, okay, did they add the windows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It was obviously something else then, wasn't it?
It certainly wasn't a bank.
No. Unless that's how they hauled all the money in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's an example of buildings being repurposed, isn't it? But again, when you go around the back, you see how deep down it goes. And I think in one of these, I actually go down the stairs and my signal stops because it goes so deep down.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so I have to come back up again to regain signal because I think I lost the live stream for a split second. Yeah, it's one of these buildings anyway. Can't remember which one now, but.
Yeah, we're just looking at some. I don't know what that is. It's got a fan in it, I think, but it's going underground.
Yeah, that's right. And again, that's just an example of how these buildings have that drop where there's back stairs that go down.
Though.
Yeah. Again, as you can see, lots of bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, bricks. Yeah, bricks. They are literally everywhere.
Is that on the other side? Oh, that's a newer building on the right of it, isn't it?
It looks like it, doesn't it? It looks like it looks like a right hodgepodge. But what you can't get away from is the depths to which these buildings go. So whether there's facading on it or not doesn't really matter.
Now. It looks a bit more like a tower here.
Right.
Yeah. I'd love to know how old they really are.
I know. Because we can sure as hell presume that the dates were given are not true at all.
No.
By comparison, look at those horrible old new buildings there by comparison. Like, you know, chalk and cheese.
just so hard
Yeah.
to say what's actually happened because you can't prove any of it.
No.
I can't believe the buildings would sink. They'd be leaning.
All of them, all around the country. Yeah, that just wouldn't happen. Or they'd have to have sunk worldwide.
But how
and then what would sink? Just the building and not the roads.
How come the mud hasn't knocked the building either? It must have been very, very slow.
Well, maybe it came from above.
Oh, you mean ash, like ash?
Yeah, maybe it came from above, and that's why you're seeing unevenness and stuff. If it came from below, then it would be what you were alluding to earlier. Then you'd find this.
I get that. A really bad volcano or something, or a couple of them. See, mining.
Well, either a volcano. Sorry, Karen, for interrupting. I'm just going to say either a volcano or something more cataclysmic than that that's been hidden from us, and that's why it's not in the history books.
Well, it seems
that's why we're coming across it.
I was watching one about mining, and what it is they took all the water out so they could mine, and it was really, really hot in there. You could only spend minutes in there. But they said when they finished, they'll put the water back. But you're thinking, well, why did they take the water away? It was obviously like a safety valve, and when you look at the mining, it was kind of all over by the 1900s. We'd been completely mined. They didn't care what they did. They could have caused a whole lot of volcanoes to go off or earthquakes to happen, and it caused all this ash to fall.
Yeah.
When I was watching this program once, they said that, but they said it was an imploding volcano, caused it all, killed the dinosaurs. But obviously we know that's not true. But only about 500 people on this place were left, and we come from them lot.
Well, again, impossible to know, isn't it? Impossible to know. Because, yeah. No. I mean, yeah, it's just a fascinating road where we were walking there. It's like
quite amazing that we've got all these shops and that. It's like, okay, sometimes you do see buildings being built, and you know that supermarkets and all that are built, but you don't really see that much being built, but we have it all. And even in the 1920s, they look really all good. In the videos, even though I don't think the videos are real, they all look quite organised. They've got everything. They've got roads and pavements and grass. They mow their grass. It's almost like today, except they've got different cars, different hairstyles. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of effort. These buildings were built in a way that, it would take you, they would be so time consuming today if you build them.
Brighton's just a good example of that. I mean, that's got the oldest aquarium. It had the chain link pier, and now it doesn't, but it had the first aquarium. It had these great big buildings. From when they were showing you like a drawing from the air, it looked like a palace without a wall. It's had windmills, which is to extract water from. Yes, obviously. They burrowed the chain link pier into the cliff. Which how could they? They couldn't even deliver milk and bread properly, but they're burrowing into the hill.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Yeah, there's certain basics in life that weren't possible, and yet we're supposed to believe that they could build things like St. Paul's Cathedral or whatever. Go on, sorry.
18 tons of marble. Well, something else I've learnt about churches, right? When you get to the Norman churches, they're the ones with the crisscrosses, but the crisscrosses are like the beams as well, so they're all twisted. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
In churches, when you look up.
Yeah.
St. Paul's Cathedral's got it, one in Marlborough's got it, loads of churches. Well, those were built by the Normans, and that was the 11th century.
That's what we're told, yeah.
How could they build all that?
Yeah, well, they wouldn't have. I mean, what were they doing? We're supposed to believe everybody was working on a field, and don't forget, we were supposed to be an agricultural civilization only up until the Industrial Revolution.
We had wooden wheels.
Up to that point, it was mules, it was carts, and we were plucking potatoes. That's it.
Wooden wheels.
Allegedly. Yeah. How are you getting through, any field with that sort of, transportation? It just wouldn't. It's too primitive. Wouldn't work. So whoever was around and whoever built these, they sure knew how to build things, but the question is, who was it? You know?
Some people say that all these old buildings, they were the gods that were here before. You know, that's why half of them's buried. Because they're much bigger buildings and like giants. What's your take on that bit?
Well, there's a little town in between Bournemouth and Poole called Lilliput, right? And Lilliput, of course, is the town where all the small people come from in Gulliver's Travels. And Gulliver's Travels, of course, one of the many books that make reference to giants, right? So I think it's more than conceivable that a larger being was around before we were, perhaps, or whatever, or maybe even inhabited this realm at the same time at some point. Who knows?
I don't know, but think of it is that it's like in Flash Gordon times, and then they go, "We've got a megaton gun. We can fire it, and we'll destroy it, and it'll be consumed with rock." Does that sound all right? Done.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, we're looking at the church now, and again, you can see there all the unevenness of it all, you know.
Do you think that's
entrances.
The same thing again? They cladded that one as well, or is that brick?
They would have cladded it over brick probably, but the point again is it goes deep down. So even the cladding was affected by the raising of the ground, or the mud flood, or whatever you want to call it. This is the thing. This is the astounding thing.
It's not a very high door, is it, on that church?
No, it's not. And to the right of it, as Dave was pointing out a minute ago, you've got those low arches that clearly go further deep down. So it looks like that door entrance arch. It's like half of it's missing. Yeah. So cladding or no cladding, fact of the matter is, there's an evidence of something that's happened with our ground level. You know, everywhere we look.
Is it that they built these things on the side of hills and they just built the roads up to match the build? It is crazy. I just can't put my finger on it.
Well, it isn't crazy, but then we have to think, okay, when did we start having transport, cars and stuff like that? Well, 1900s, beginning of the 1900s, 1910, 1920, did people start?
Cars back to the 1700s now.
I want about like people in general who were driving around using cars.
Right, yeah, and when do they stick?
Households.
It's like in the videos that you find, the earliest ones, they've all got roads. Every car is on a road.
Right, so, okay, alright, well, I've never seen video footage of cars on a road from the 1700s, but...
No, not from there, but I'm saying when you watch the videos, as far back as you can go, the cars always have roads to drive on.
That's a good point, because, yeah, so what are you building roads for if you don't have something to make them useful? You know, you wouldn't build roads like that for pedestrians.
That overhead train thing that was in Germany, and they had that at the turn of the century, and that was going through the streets.
I've been on that. Yeah, I've been on that. It's in a town city called Wuppertal, which is just near. It's not far from Dortmund, and it's a very industrial area. Again, industrial heartland. You know, coal mines galore, and that train system. They still use the original network, and it follows the contours of the river Wupper. And that's where the town gets its name from, and it's a fascinating train. And that was built turn of the century, end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, officially. The earliest footage, I think, is from can't remember now. There's some very early footage, 1910 or something like that.
Well, that bit of the church looks so much older than the other bit, and the other bit looked old, but that looks older.
Right. Again, a bit of a hodgepodge, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what you can do, so, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? So you're restoring something, perhaps, when in actual fact you're adding something to it. A bit like Stonehenge.
A lot of churches are like that, though, Sven. A lot of churches are higgledy-piggledy. We went to one in Avebury, and
yeah, you're right.
I never realised they were all higgledy-piggledy and added and everything.
You're right, yeah. There are a lot of churches that are like that. So what were they hiding with those add-ons? That's my question.
Well, they used to be pagan buildings.
Well, before that.
And then they turned them into churches. They used different doors.
But they would not have built magnificent buildings like that just to have a handful of people sitting in there doing worshipping when they themselves were living in mud huts.
No, it's almost
not...
as if, like I told you, in the 1800s, with all the orphan children, it was like they were funneling people in, and it's like we came across this place and all the buildings were here.
Yeah. Repurposed and
flooded, whatever. But there was just a lot. Obviously, they've destroyed in the last 100 years. God knows how much they've really destroyed.
Well, it makes you wonder how much this cataclysmic event, what we like to call mud flood, how much that has to do with the repopulation or the reset.
I mean, why is it okay that Bournemouth keeps nearly all its old buildings, but others don't?
Yeah, or others pretend they do. They build them back up in the form of the old way, but only with cheaper material.
That was such a shock. We, about 2 or 3 years ago, I went to London mud flooding looking, and you could see that the buildings had different bases to the building that was on top.
Yeah.
How could they do that? How could they have a base of a building and then build another one on top?
Because the German bombs only exploded above ground, didn't they? Of course, or they'll have some sort of excuse.
We're going to have a nice clear cut across the top so we could just put another building on.
That's right. That's right, yeah. Yeah, a bit like cartoon aeroplanes that fly through steel frame buildings. Yeah. But but don't you know, we landed on the moon as well, Karen, so, anything's possible. Yeah. But the moon's made of cheese, so...
That is right, it's definitely made of cheese.
Definitely made of cheese. I'll argue that point with anybody.
We're looking at another building now in front of you. It's got, like, flags on it. It's quite a nice building.
Yeah, it looks like an old Victorian kind of build, doesn't it, with a lot of metal frontage on it?
Yeah.
And the brickwork is a bit pink. It's got like a pink gloss over. Well, that building goes, as you're looking at it from there, it's a deep building, goes back quite far as well. Damn. And again, it goes deep down. We go over to that, I think, in a bit, and we have a closer look, either now or later on. I can't remember now. But anyway, it goes, again, deep down, and you've got basements with... you just think, no, you're not building basements like that. Just doesn't make sense. I mean, look at the steepness of that hill.
Yeah, there's buildings standing. It almost looks colonial, doesn't it?
It does. It looks colonial.
Looks a bit American-like. So.
Well, whatever that means. Yeah. Well, because a lot of their old buildings, of course, we know are the same as ours, aren't they? It's like, okay, we don't really know. Obviously, white settlers didn't build them all in America. We didn't have the people for it. We only went over on a few wooden boats.
This white building, I think, had a flat roof on it. And it goes down.
Yeah.
I mean, did they build it like that?
I don't know.
A lot of work then to do that, and if they did, amazing. These people were amazing.
It looks like it looks like an embassy, doesn't it? The white building. Those embassies you find dotted around the world. They all have these like the little small stately buildings, like mini white houses, if you like. Got the pillars in front of the door and stuff like that.
60 years later, people can't remember what it was.
No, I can't remember what's in there now, but yeah.
Wow, it's always nice going for a walk with you then, Sven.
Oh, well, you guys must pop down to Bournemouth sometime.
Well, I was thinking about it a few weeks ago, but then it just didn't happen. But then I heard that Dave was moving off, and I thought,
Yeah, he's moving about a bit at the moment. I'm sure we'll be back at some stage. I'm not too sure.
Oh, so we could meet up at some time. That'd be good.
Absolutely. Well, there's a tour going on soon on the 11th of July, if all goes to plan, and it's going around different cities in England until the 22nd of July.
Where are you going then?
We're going to start in Plymouth, and then we're going to go work our way across the country. So I think it's Plymouth, and then it's Bath after that, and then Cardiff. I'm not too sure if we're going to Bristol. I can't remember now, but there's a few places dotted around: Nottingham, Birmingham, Norwich, all that sort of thing, up to Hull, and across to Preston. So we're doing a few places, Cardiff as well, and we're going to just go set up some banners and stuff and talk about all topics. So it's not going to be a flat earth thing, it's not going to be a chemtrails thing, it's going to be an everything thing, right? So we're going to talk about all sorts of topics, because I think, the ground is fertile to talk to people about all topics. I think a lot of people know that there's something wrong, and I think it's a good idea to kind of interact with them and be a bit proactive about it. Not in a way of a demo, but in a way of just conversation, you know? So that's what we're going to do.
Very good. Yes, I like that.
Yeah. So we're going to do live activism streams. So a bit like what Dave and I did here, but it'll go on for however long we're going to be doing the activism on a daily basis. And then we'll do update shows in an evening as well, to sort of round up the day's events and things like that, and gain a bit of a, you know, a gauge on where people are at. Because, you know, you can't trust the media, we know that. The only way to find out where people are at is to actually talk to them. You know, and also it's, yeah, I think it's important for us as well to talk about these things, because you go insane otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you need to talk to people.
You do. You need to talk to. Now, there's nothing to do with the fantasy world of trying to change the world. We know that's not going to happen. But you know, if you can at least get one person to think a little bit, or to have a little look, or maybe gain a bit of an open mind around something, well, then you've achieved your goal.
What it usually is it's obviously us slightly older lot. Our families have left. You know who we are as people, and you make different decisions then. I'm not saying everybody's old, but
yeah.
maybe, I don't know, it's just that you have to know who you are as a person, and then that changes everything.
Yeah, but not everybody then changes, do they? Not everybody suddenly gets that realization and wakes up to stuff. A lot of people remain in their slumber forever, don't they? And that's the thing. So that in itself is an interesting query and question, isn't it? Why do some people kind of wake up and yet most don't? What's going on there? Yeah, I think that in itself is a fascinating topic.
You give them a bit of an enlightenment. You give them this fork, and they either go left or right. Maybe we went left, and they will go right. They carry on.
Maybe.
But we didn't.
Yeah, could be. No. Something went click and spurred us on to take a closer look. And because it's all connected, it then leads you on to other topics and, you know, the proverbial rabbit holes that we talk about. But yeah, because it is all connected, hence the tour being about all topics. Because
I do like it with you, because at least you go out and you film it yourself, you know?
Yeah. I think it's the only way to do it, really. I think if you're going to be talking about a specific thing and you can get a hands-on view of it, then yeah, you should go ahead and do it. I mean, there's a building he's looking at now, and you can see the entrances are far too low. The red brick building that he's looking at. I think I might be a little bit ahead of you on the video, but yeah, you'll see in a minute. There's a guy walks in shot with an orange carrier bag.
There's a window down there.
Yeah, well, there's two windows right in front of you, and then to the right there's like an archway entrance. Well, that looks top heavy. It looks squashed, you know. They didn't just raise the roads up because, well, you have to raise the roads up everywhere, and the churches are mud flooded and they're not next to any road. Well, that one was, but there are others that aren't.
It's hard to believe that they were that advanced, that they could do all this.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe because, of course, the information we've given doesn't equate, does it?
It's almost like...
And so it doesn't compute.
Something's happened, and then they found it, and then they've done the best they can around everything.
Yeah. Well, it's a massive deception operation, isn't it, really? That's what it is. It's a cover-up of some sort.
Why is it that there's like pneumatic train systems under the ground and they won't tell us? So they have to build it up to make a gap big enough so that nothing caves in or something.
Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, just there, like the retaining wall that you see there, for example. Okay, well, you would have had to build that bit there before you build the road, right?
Yeah.
So they haven't raised the road to that level, because why would you raise a road above the window level? So you're right there.
But you're coming to another building now where the road's there and the windows are below the ground level.
Right. Is that the red brick one, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I was just looking at. So you can see there, And then when we go around the side of it, there's a retaining wall, and you see the windows below street level. So that building's been there longer than that road has, and that on the rest of it around it. You know.
It's almost like each town had maybe lots of little hills, and they got rid of them.
Yeah.
What a decision to make. Well, when we put the roads in, we're going to cover up 2 or 3 floors of every building when we do this on some parts, but don't worry about it.
And you'd get all this done before you start repopulating the areas, wouldn't you? You'd have a select few that would be privy to it, and then you'd slowly introduce people to regions, and that's where you'll see this steady...
destroy it in time.
Yeah, and that's where, you see a slight increase in the population. It will go from 800 to 2,000 in 10 years, 15 years, whatever, 20 years, and blah, blah. That's how it works, right? Yeah, I can very well imagine that's how they did it. And of course, if you're also adding a lot of big major events along the way, well, you've got plenty of how can I say? You've got plenty of front to hide behind in terms of repurposing your buildings, destroying them, revamping them, whatever you want to do with them. But certainly, under the guise of a war or anything else, you can do all that, can't you? Because people are too worried about survival, I suppose, because that's what they've been told. You ration people's foods, you black them out at night time. They're not even allowed to switch your lights on in case the Germans see you from 10,000 feet. Your living room light might be spotted from above the clouds. Yeah, right. All that crazy nonsense.
Yeah, just thinking this building well below ground level.
Mm-hmm. And the retaining wall, of course.
It's about the same, isn't it? It's like a floor level below the ground, or 2 floor levels.
But that level there that you're looking down, that trench, as it were, that retaining wall there that you see, well, that'll go down another level, because if you looked at the window is on the level of the bottom of that pit, if you like. So that pit goes deeper. Because you don't build windows at ground level. Why? Windows would be up halfway up a wall, wouldn't they? They wouldn't be at ground level. A door would be, but not a window.
Well, that could be the right height, but then the road isn't.
Right, exactly. And why the retaining wall? Well, because that helps the illusion, doesn't it? If there wasn't a retaining wall and it was a mud flood building like all the others, well, you'd see it very clearly on one that's on a on a very steep incline, right? So doing a retaining wall like that and pulling it back and stuff makes it look neater, makes it almost look like it was built there on purpose like that. But of course it wasn't.
No. It's crazy.
Again, a lot of facading on there as well. You can see the facading, see the different types of bricks, and also slight differences in colour.
A lot of these things which look beautiful and magnificent were cast.
Right. The facading stuff was, no doubt, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All I can think of is that, but who made the decision then? Well, there's lots of little tiny bubbly hills and nobody flattened the road out, but we're doing it now. We're putting a road across and we're going to lose section of buildings. Who makes that decision?
Yeah. No idea.
But the ash one, I can see that one, but then that would be a lot of ash, wouldn't it?
Well, either ash or at least the similar principle of stuff coming from the sky. Don't know. I don't know in what form or what it would have been. It may have been ash. It may have been what we now find on the ground that came from above. Who knows?
That building there now looks Tudor.
Right.
Sorry, I know it's red brick and it's got stone on it, but the kind of way it is, it's more Tudor-like.
Right, I know what you mean.
Not the building to the left or the building to the right, but that one in the middle. It kind of annoys me because I just want the answer. I want to know which one it is. or something coming down and covering that. That seems the most.
It seems the most plausible because it's not all flat and level all over the place in terms of everywhere in the world. If that was the case, if let's say it came up from below and raised, it would kind of level itself out like water would, right? It wouldn't be.
We want to know who put the wall in, who put the retainer wall in on this building.
Right, exactly. And why put a retaining wall there? Well, it's part of the illusion, and to make use of the flats downstairs, of course.
Doesn't ever give them much of a garden down there, do they? It's usually quite close to the road.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite a lovely building, isn't it?
It is. It is a very nice building. And in a minute, it will go around to the theatre in a minute, and it will say. It says on there the Theatre Royale on the blue plaque, 1882. Now it's a brick building. So that's wrong for a kickoff. So if it was the Theatre Royale in 1882, it means it must have been built before then. Well, that's already before brick manufacturing took place. So that date already is wrong. Now, unless you know the dates of brick manufacturing, you're not going to know that. Because most people won't know that. They'll read the plaque and go, oh, look, this was a theatre in 1882. Oh, hang on a minute, it's made of red brick. Oh, hang on a minute, they didn't mass manufacture them until 1885. Something's wrong here. Nobody asks that question because most people don't know.
Well, there's no time in our lifetime that you remember them going, hey, guess what? They're putting all this facade up over the bank, or they're putting all this stone up.
Exactly. They'll just say it's refurbishment, or they'll say because there's a weakness in the building, in the construction, they have to change something. Whatever excuse it is, or it was damaged in the war. There's another classic. Oh, there's a bomb being found, an unexploded bomb. We're going to have to dig out such and such a building. How many times have you heard that? 70 years later, after a war, with all our technology we've got, what, we're still finding bombs? Really? You got to be kidding me.
Have you noticed that
you should be able to see,
the pipe goes through the facade as well, down the building? They put the facade round the pipes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of facading going on, isn't there?
Obviously to cover some things up.
Absolutely. And they've obviously covered it in a style that was reminiscent of its original, I would say.
But why leave this one and knock down 10 others?
Because that one plus 10 others would be too obvious. So maybe get rid of a load and let one or two stand, and then you could always say, oh, that was our geniuses from the Victorian days. Right. But of course, yeah. 1882, really? Okay, well, let me tell you a little story. Yeah. So again, and that's hopefully we're going to do that on the tour, is actually park our banners in front of an old world building or something, because you'd have a topic right there, wouldn't you?
Yes, roll up, roll up, roll up. Yeah.
Because it's there. The examples are right in front of us. They're not fictional or anything. They're right there. You can see them. They're tangible.
Oh, we're going down the side now. Just going past an archway.
Yes, we'll go past the archway, yeah.
It's a bit annoying, because I just wanted to say we've been going for an hour and 42 minutes now. I don't know how long. Yeah, I'm not sure how long you want to go on for, but that's quite a long hangout now.
Listen, I'll leave that to you. That's up to you. I'm flexible, so whatever you want to do, that's your decision.
You keep going places in the video, don't you?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like the old days. I don't do it so much now because
So
when you go into a live,
look like ones in New York. Oh, everything's changing, Sven. I can't handle it.
yeah. There's all sorts, and we've even got the Art Deco buildings as well in Bournemouth. There's a few of them.
Yeah.
Just to mix it all up a bit and get people really confused. But yeah.
Well, there you go, 1882.
Yep, that's the Theatre Royal. Now, even if that was the opening date of the Theatre Royal, well, it's too early for a red brick building. Not of that size, anyway. Of that size, that's too early. So, yeah.
Crazy.
It is crazy, because what you see above the ground is not...
Hitler did some of it. He's using a cyclorama.
They're interesting, aren't they, cycloramas?
Because as I slow it down, you can see all the people going dong, 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 and it's like they're going round. They're just showing a film and it's going round him.
Yeah.
I mean, they were doing all this. It's just hard when they had this and then they say that, and they had that and then they say that. And it's just like they just don't go together.
No, they don't go together. I mean, again, you look at London, the Albert Hall. Whoever talks about that building and really questions it?
Yeah, that's a cyclorama. Oh no, the Globe Theatre. I reckon that was one cyclorama originally.
The cycloramas, yeah. I mean, the Albert Hall. What purpose would that serve? I mean, look at that building and look at the monument outside it. Cyclorama, yeah. Well, the thing is, though, again, it's always a reference to Victoria, right? This is the thing. She, for me, is. I think that's the key. Symbolic beginning of the rollout of what we have today as a civilization. I think that's the key. You know, the most. I mean, look outside Buckingham Palace, the Victoria Monument. It's massive. You know.
Yeah, you know what? There used to be a pyramid.
You've got Osborne. You've got okay, but I mean, it's Victoria though that they're bringing in connection with those buildings. That's the thing.
Covered it up with putting that statue on the top.
Yes, but it's always with Victoria stuff. Is the point I'm making on that. It's not Elizabeth I. It's not him.
The double eagles are everything. You don't really associate her with double eagles, do you?
Well, double eagles can mean anything. I mean, Albania has a double eagled flag, for example. Russia does, Serbia does.
Part of it. They're all part of the same thing. Yeah. We all belong to the same thing.
Eagle, yeah. The higher up, up the higher up the ladders, like Germany's emblem is an eagle, always was. Even well before the Nazis, the Germans always had an eagle, right? The Americans like to use an eagle. Whatever, you know. You have to symbology of...
Sven, you're at this house, it's for sale. You've got to go up the steps to get in the building, yet there's a floor below, under the pavement.
Right.
Crazy that. Up
Why?
To go in, but actually down below.
Yeah. And there's loads of those buildings around Bournemouth. But just look at that, half a window sticking out.
Do you think that window was bigger to start with? Oh no, maybe not, because I can see the one above just about there, yeah.
Maybe not, but you can see that it's been painted over and worked on. There's bricks behind it.
Right.
But again, facading going on there.
And another wall.
As well.
Another wall.
Yeah.
What's that then? What's that wall for?
I'm not too sure where you're at.
Another retaining wall going across.
Yes, yeah.
Floss, shut up.
Stop
it. My dog's
another retaining wall, yeah.
Yeah, crazy. That is crazy. Oh, lots of windows below the ground there. So it's not just it's not just London that gets this, and parts of London don't even have it.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, you know, every town I've been to now, I pay attention to it, and it's literally everywhere. You will find evidence of it everywhere in every town. So it's clearly affected everywhere. Yeah. I mean, some of these entrances to these houses, and you're thinking, yeah, why? You wouldn't build them like that anymore.
No,
Absolutely
I think
not.
we're living in an age where it's almost called, we're so, everything, like this was architecture, but it's not today, it's just a box. There's no real architecture anymore to things, whereas in these times, they loved it.
They had a purpose in those times. This is the thing. They were used for something else, a lot of these places, I would say. Some of them dwellings, maybe. But, you know, a lot of these big red brick buildings, or these big churches or whatever, you know, they just do not make sense to have them built for a community of humans. Who would build them for a kickoff? You'd need the manpower and everything else that we spoke about earlier. You know, it just doesn't make sense. This is where we go down the stairs in a minute. Dave opens a gate, and I think I go down there with the camera. And you'll see how deep down it goes.
Okay, we'll watch that bit, and then maybe we'll finish after. I don't want to, but we've been going on for nearly an hour and 50 minutes, so we'll go downstairs with you.
Okay, and then you can just see, as an example, and even there, when I'm right downstairs, I'm stood on a concrete platform, so it goes even deeper down than that.
Goodness knows how really deep these buildings go.
Yeah, and the stairs are made of brick. I mean, if you had concrete...
When you've got brick windowsills and brick steps, they're older.
Yeah, and if you had concrete at your disposal, would you build floors and stairs made of bricks? No, you wouldn't. You'd pour concrete, let it dry, and that's it, job done. That's what they do today. They have big sections of staircases that are slotted in, like puzzle pieces. They don't build them one bit at a time, like a stair at a time. They build them in sections of staircases, right? And then they crane them in and they attach them together like a Meccano set. That's how they do it nowadays. You know, but those days they built it all bit by bit.
Cool, that's a little door.
Literally everything.
Or is that windows? Not sure. Wow.
And it's, yeah.
Did your arms ache? With the camera?
Hey?
Did your arms ache with the camera?
Actually, do you know what? No, it didn't. I was so taken in with the topic. Half the time I wasn't noticing I was even filming, to be honest with you.
Here we go. We're going downstairs.
Right.
Out come the pigeons. Oh, God, it goes... Right. Oh, my God.
Yeah, and where I'm stood at the bottom, that goes even further down.
Oh, and there's other roofs down there. Like, what is all this? It's another world.
Indeed. Yeah, another world.
Wow.
And all of that is built of bricks, made of bricks. So, you know, you think to yourself, what is going on there so deep down in the ground? How did you dig all that earth out to do that? Well, you didn't. The earth came in, however it happened, and then they built accordingly. Or it just covered it all up and they cleared it all. Whatever, but, yeah.
Wow.
I know. And it was lucky because that gate had to be open.
It's always going down. We need to find out what's down there.
Yeah, it's always going down. I know. That is the key, I think. I think that's where it's rocking and rolling. Underground. Or it did anyway back then. Yeah. But there we have it. There was that's well, how far in is that? Well, it's an hour and 15 minutes into the video anyway already, so.
Let's have a look.
And it's basically more of the same, you know, you see the same all along that road. You know, each building looks slightly different than the other.
Wow.
You know, and the actual brand new buildings, you can see that they've been built to accommodate the steep slope, right? They haven't been mud flooded. They've been built onto the slope, if you like, but not into the slope, right? So these buildings, they're in the slope, actually in the ground. And then, you know, as you saw there, when you go behind the building, you go down those flights of stairs, and suddenly you realise how deep down that goes. Well, that's why the modern buildings, they build them just on the top of the slope, at right angles.
Wow. They look like quite a few old buildings in this bit, so they're probably all built the same. If you saw around the back.
Yep. And we did later on as well. There are a couple of other places as well, and same thing. And it's like, yeah. Fascinating stuff, it really is.
Wow, that was quite a long way down those steps in that last place.
Yeah, it was about 5 meters, I think we said, from where I was to where Dave was stood at the top of the second flight of steps on ground level. So from him to me was about 5 meters. And it went down another 6 feet. at least, because you can see that with the window that's at the bottom. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you for letting us mirror your fantastic journey with Dave, Trinity 4.
Yeah, at any time, and thank you for sharing it. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's actually
very much.
A pleasure, and I will in the future.
I hope so. Yeah, it'll be great, and hopefully we can, repeat a conversation. I don't think you can ever stop talking about this sort of stuff because it's everywhere. And we might talk in circles a little bit. Yeah, definitely. We might never come to conclusions, but it's a fascinating topic worth talking about. It's all connected, isn't it?
Today by putting that in, I never really, we know it goes down and everything, but I never really thought, inside some of these places which we can't see, it's all going to be like that. And you think, oh my God, what are we living in?
Right. It's bizarre, isn't it? A lot of it does not make sense. It just doesn't, and that's it, really.
Like
and of course, what we've
flats, aren't they already?
Yeah, and we know that the narrative we've been given is not true. That's one conclusion we definitely can make. The question is, what is the true narrative?
Yeah, and any buildings the banks have got, they're obviously nice buildings.
Yeah, banks, town halls, all those sorts of buildings.
Yeah.
The important ones, as it were.
Well, I've really enjoyed walking around. I wish we could, you've got another part to this. We could have had like a 6-hour hangout.
Well,
Anyway.
Yeah, anytime Karen want to do that again, definitely. I'd be more than willing to. Plenty to talk about.
Yeah, well, just for this hangout, don't go, but for the hangout here, which I'm recording, we'll say goodbye, and then we'll say goodbye afterwards. But
okay.
I've really enjoyed this. Hopefully it's opened people's eyes a bit more, and like, wow, that last building, that's blown my mind a bit more, but yeah, thank you.
Oh, no worries, yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. And hopefully I can get some more footage soon. I want to go out soon. The weather's going to be nice next few days, and I will go out again and just take a look at even the unassuming buildings, the ones that don't look magnificent and old, and see what I find there. And then I'll be sure to upload it and let you know.
Thank you, Sven. Anyway, for this hangout,
no worries, Karen.
Sven and the chat room.
Thank you to everybody who'll be watching this at a later date, and thank you, Karen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.